Hello, space nerds. What's up? It's a late night. I'm getting ready for dinner and to go watch the Video Game Awards, but we've got some more new news from Star Citizen's 4.5 PTU, and I think your earballs are looking for it. So I'm gonna give you a little workup here. It's probably not coming out until the following day, but this is the latest changes to engineering, and it's a little confusing. Let's jump straight in. Engineering has received a bit of an update with the 4.5 PTU. This is actually in addition to the VR announcement, which we covered in the previous video, I guess, talking about 4.5 bringing virtual reality to Star Citizen as a new experimental feature. It's been in the works for a long time. We made a full post to go over the features, so Sylvan went ahead and let the folks know he has been working on this diligently for like a year and a half at least. And he gave us the whole look. You can come in here and read all of the details if you'd like, if you got a VR headset, but if you don't, and you're like me, then you're more interested in engineering right now. Now, the engineering update has seen a couple changes. Critical timer for the power plant has doubled. This is something we've been talking about as the power plant exploding kind of robs you of the whole, repair and fix your ship. I was thinking that they could double the armor health, they could fix the critical state to be longer, whatever it might be. It seems like they have at least extended the timer. Now they're saying only the power plant is going to receive damage, not other components or thrusters, when a critical part such as the ship hull reaches 0. This is the big change that is messing people up and honestly confusing even myself a little bit about where they're going with engineering, but we'll come back to that after we get through this whole update. They've also increased the shield regen and health for size 2 shields, which is good. They fixed fuse damage modifier for single-seater ships with no interior. Okay, so specifically that's with no interior. That's what I was wondering, is if fuses with an interior will work. So I think if they're sticking to the same thing, then fuses don't take damage anymore, but check the comments to make sure that's confirmed. Fixed shield balancing for capital ships. Further Idris M and Starlancer TAC armor updates to differentiate military variances. That's important when it comes to armor for sure. Fix for ships overheating when initially spawned by ASOP. Add legend to the 3D view. Adjust alert icons to support status critical icon. Fixed rooms, buttons, circle size. Add darkening background filters, made font sizes and spaces more uniform. Adjustments to weapon nudge and angles. Added fuses and more filled salvage canisters to ship component shops. They also show up in ships, which is kind of nice right now. Setting default interaction of harvest bowls to store instead of carry. That's a good move. That's a small one. So the engineering updates are the important ones here, and mainly what's going on is this is just confusing people. You can actually look at the feedback folks are giving. The idea that a critical part can take damage, and then because that critical part is taking damage, another part of the ship can explode, is really weird. I will agree. I mean, I understood the hull damage coming down to 0 and then the ship exploding from that. I also thought, at least, that you would take the armor damage down and then you'd be able to target the component specifically, and targeting the power plant would make it explode. But as a lot of people are understanding here, what seems to be the case is that if you take the ship hull down to 0, then your power plant will start to receive damage. They didn't specify if this means it can receive damage or it automatically does. I'm sure some people have gotten in game to test this, but the idea that like they could be ruining your hull in the back of the ship and then your power plant in the front of the ship is getting damage is just runs really wrong regarding what engineering is supposed to be, which is extending the life of ships, making ships able to be repaired, able to be maintained, able to be customized in less insane intense ways. I think we are focusing a ton on how engineering affects combat because that is the main place where it has an effect. I actually think that what we're seeing from engineering is good for the rest of the game, but in terms of combat encounters, this is a little worrying, and I do think that I'm starting to feel more and more like they need to just get rid of the idea of the ship exploding unless you're targeting something specifically. While that something could be the power plant, I think it should take a lot of targeting and fire. Like, there's this interesting thing going on where CIG is consistently trying to adjust this system and make it work in some way they want it to, and they have told us what they want us to do. But if you do go back to some of their older videos and some of the things that they have been talking about when it comes to this system, it's hard to understand if they're still going for that, I guess. It feels a little bit like almost like they're not following that. Listen to what they had to say here in IAE last year. Richard Tyrer and John Crew were kind of running a lot of what happens with vehicles in a large way. Richard Tyre is the game director, John Crew is the vehicle lead vehicle manager. They were talking about this last year. Listen to what they have to say here about a year ago.
Are they supposed to go up like confetti like they currently do? And what's the vision for space combat supposed to be?
I think the first thing we need to talk about is moving away from time to kill and move towards time to disable.
Now, they're doing that. We're getting better, but there's these weird things like the power plant just blowing the whole ship up that are starting to make people think maybe we're not fully dedicated to time to disable. Maybe there's still some time to kill that they want. They want ships to blow up, which I understand. I get that. In certain situations, that's fun. That's cool. But for the overall game, it feels a little roughshod.
Because in the PU, ships are not always going to explode, but we want you to be
not always going to.
Of wanting to own your ship. Loss should matter. And we want you to put time and effort into your ship, and that means time and effort into keeping your ship alive, and if something does happen, getting it back.
It should be easier to keep our ship alive than it is to kill ships, I think.
We talked about physicalized damage in the past. Is this just a matter of getting that physicalized damage system in, or is there more to it than this?
First off, physicalized damage is tied to our Maelstrom system, which you probably didn't know, but we saw for the first time in action for the squadron demo. All the ships, for example, in the turret sequence were set up with Maelstrom and using our physicalized damage system. We're moving towards more of a physically based system that actually works out the speed of the projectile, the collision, and then generates the force, and that force then dictates the damage that's associated with the ship itself.
Now that is a system that you can also go and look up because they have demoed it to some extent. I'll say this, we don't know exactly where it's going to go from what they've shown, because I do genuinely think it needs to be scaled back in some ways from what they've shown us. But this is still a huge part of the game, and you can see here actually just how ridiculously dramatic this system is. It basically takes all of the parts of the ship and turns them into cantilever beams, detecting the stresses and strains and forces that are applied to them. Look at how complicated just the Gladius is. So this is the idea behind Maelstrom, and that is a fully physicalized damage system, which is meant to allow us to keep shooting and eventually just like rip a ship apart. Go through its armor, go through its ship interior, slowly take parts away from the ship, which is technically the end state for where we're supposed to be going. And I think they're moving in that direction. The thing is, they seem to want to say there is a state at which the ship will break apart, and that's because you've shot the hull so much. I don't think that's being represented in what they're doing at 4.5 right now, though. With 4.5, it feels like it's going to be too easy, and honestly, the power plant's going to die too much. Now, here is a very dramatic example of their previous goals for Maelstrom. As you can see, ships in pieces. So, just a confusing bit of Star Citizen's development, you know? What do we judge it on? Where it's supposed to go or what it is now? I usually judge on where it's supposed to go, but it is confusing when the things that they're doing to actively change these systems that they're working on to get into the game are seemingly going a little bit against where we seem to think that they're going. That being said, we'll see what they do. I think they should definitely be getting more and more feedback about whether this system is working or not. We should be giving that feedback based on actually playing. I haven't gotten to play with this new system yet, so I'm not going to say this is wrong. It's just a little confusing, and hopefully we get a little bit more clarity and this continues to find its path. But I do think this is going to end up going into the game a little bit early, and it's probably going to be painful. Either way, hope you got some news and updates from this. Thank you again for being here. Merry Christmas. Y'all are amazing. Keep those smiles fresh and shiny and stuff. Catch you in the next one.